Hi there, welcome to Grey Muzzle Geekery. I'm your host, Dusty Red, and with me as always,
Dusty White. And
we have this week's news for March 11th, 2019. I told you I was going to do it. Alright, so we have March 10th will be Mario Day. Get it? M-A-R-1-O. Ha 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 ha. They're doing a couple sales, nothing too fancy from the look of it. It looks like the console and one game will be $340, and the games themselves, anything that has Mario, what they say is mustachioid.
Yeah.
I prefer proboscis, so I guess his mass gross proboscis will be on sale for $40. I believe that it's like Mario Tennis and Mario Party, which I probably may end up picking up because I'm overdue having it for Nintendo Switch. But yeah, the Nintendo Switch will be going for $340 with that game. So Mario Day on March 10th.
Critical Role's Vox Machina D&D animation project breaks Kickstarter's record, pledging over $5.7 million as of day 5 into their campaign. They hit over $750,000 within an hour, being number 3 of the fastest campaigns ever funded.
Yeah, they've got a crazy growth. Just a rabid fan base. And,
absolutely. I mean, the critters are off the chain. And
not to mention, Mercer, Matt Mercer, is kind of you're turning red. I can see it a little bit, just the name, Matt Mercer. So, at its prime in the early 2000s, 9,000 stores existed across the United States. But now, only 2 exist. And on March 31st, the store in Morley, Australia closes its doors, leaving the last Blockbuster video on Earth will be in Bend, Oregon. So, yeah, we have 1 Blockbuster left on Earth as of March 31st.
Crazy.
Wow, what a difference.
In movie news, talking about Blockbuster, Maleficent 2 is slated to be released October of 2019.
That's actually closer. That's a fairly short announcement, I guess.
Right?
It's coming out soon.
Amazon Lord of the Rings series confirms its setting in the vaguest way possible. They only released a Twitter saying, "Welcome to the second age."
Welcome to the new age, to the new age. Whoa, whoa, whoa. See, that's why I don't do karaoke. And a new little thing that we're going to throw out there every now and then and hopefully not need it. We're going to call it the Grey Muzzle Graveyard.
Ugh.
Yeah, I know. We're starting to lose some. So, we have Keith Flint of Prodigy died at age 49 on March 4th. We have Christopher Pales, basically known as King Kong Bundy. He died at 63 on March 4th. And Luke Perry dies at age 52 on March 4th as well. I mean, 52, 49, even 63, pretty young.
Yeah.
And again, for some of us, like, I remember my, actually early 2000s and even a little bit of 90s. Like, I had that rap rock vibe that was going on.
Okay.
Like, my high school thing was all that. I just missed that grunge, the fun grunge stuff, and like kind of obscure type stuff that took the alternative storm. And then like by the time I got into the music scene, it was all Korn and Kitty and Prodigy. And yeah, I didn't listen to it much, but that was the
what
thing.
Was Prodigy's like one hit?
Firestarter.
Okay.
Smack My Bitch Up.
Okay, thank you. I guess I shouldn't call them one hit wonders because they had more than one. But I feel like that's the tail end of me getting into music as well in my age.
They're a UK punk thing going on, and they were far more aggressive. They weren't metal, but they were techno punk basically.
Right.
It was a different vibe because it was aggressive as hell. And at this point in the late 90s, early 2000s, things started getting watered down and kind of like censored more.
Okay.
MTV stopped playing music for the most part.
I mean, yes.
So the stuff, there was a level of censorship where Prodigy came in and just was punching everybody in the face and like, hey, we're aggressive. And he was straight up like...
So let's kind of segue out of headlines and kind of go into a little bit of a bad topic, but what artist in the last 10 or 15 years has died that affected you the most?
I mean, it's cliche, I don't want to say cliche, but maybe just like so obvious and it's painful. But I still dance between either Prince or Bowie.
Okay.
I hate the feeling of saying that it's like, oh, the two obvious ones, but at the same time, their contribution to music and the fact that my sisters got to see Prince and I didn't, and I'm still mad to this day that they got to see Prince in Chicago. I forgot what year it was, but he was at the United Center in Chicago, and there they were, like, they got to see Prince, and it's that kind of music, the influence that Prince had in general, I think probably more so than Bowie for me.
Okay.
But Bowie was also he's an icon. I mean, beyond being the Goblin King and just the other numerous, like, he was beyond music. And same thing with Prince, though. I think Prince more dipped into music. Like, obviously he's more known for music, where Bowie is definitely known for a variety of things. I mean, for Christ's sake, he was Tesla.
Right.
He played Tesla.
One of my favorites.
So, I mean, there is that of Bowie transcended music and stuff. But on the flip side of thing, I as someone who is a fairly novice guitarist himself, like, Prince is a crazy underrated guitarist. People don't realize how good, or at least those who don't realize
those that wouldn't have gotten into his music type
don't realize how good and how technical of a guitarist that he is.
He was definitely more known as a vocalist.
Yeah, well, he's also known for his flamboyancy and his personality. I mean, if anybody's ever seen the...
Do you think that's a prereq for transcending music, is you have to have some type of out-of-this-world personality to go with it? You have your Elton Johns, your David Bowies, your Princes, your Michael Jacksons. Those are all personalities.
Easy on the Michael Jackson right now. I was about to say you have to be in movies, but if you've been watching HBO, Michael Jackson's been in a movie recently, even though he hasn't.
But I'm just saying those personalities are loud, not even obnoxious. Just
they're out there.
They're out there. They transcended, like you said.
Well,
music.
if you're a director or trying to do anything else, you want to look for personality. I mean, I'm a huge Dave Matthews fan, and he's been in a couple roles in movies and TVs, but he's never going to be known for that.
Really? How do I not know this?
He was in House.
Okay, House is a TV show, not movie.
But as I said, TVs and movies.
Oh, okay.
But he was also in Where the Red Fern Grows.
Okay.
That was a movie.
Remake.
It was a book, but it was a movie. And actually, the scary thing is he was riding one of the horses and broke his hand. And he was genuinely nervous that he wasn't going to be able to play.
Yeah.
And obviously, as a guitarist, it's kind of important. You need both hands.
One of my favorite artists played God, so I'm just saying. Alanis Morissette.
Ah, jeez. I mean, Canadians. Doesn't need to see anything more. Canadians. But yeah, I mean, beating a dead horse, I guess. Between Prince and... I want to lean on Prince more than anything else. Like, I'm more thinking about it, like, Bowie's instrumental and fantastic. Just Prince as a guitarist, Prince as a musician, as I want to say an advocate or as a voice of... I mean, a lot of people surrounded Prince as well. Actually,
right.
Bowie was a big proponent of Prince. Bowie ragged on MTV and was like, why aren't you playing his videos? Like,
that's true.
MTV was racist. They were like, hey, you're a minority, you're not going to sell, we're going to play this. And in fact, they even had Dire Straits up there singing Money for Nothing, where one of the lines in his thing is that little faggot in his makeup. Like, they dropped the F-bomb in there.
Ugh.
That was the 70s and that's whatever, but now you look at it and you're like, no, like, people stood up and was like, why is Prince and these other, you can't say black culture because he'd also dance that line, but why isn't there more stuff on MTV that isn't just your typical rock and roll stuff?
Right.
And Prince was instrumental in that. And obviously, Bowie was one of the big pushers for that, is on interviews. Like, I don't understand why Prince stuff isn't on MTV because it's mind-blowing. It's technically fantastic. It's bizarre and unique. And, I mean, you think 80s.
Right.
Go 80s. There's going to be a Prince song in there.
Absolutely.
Somewhere. So, yeah. What about you? What's something, who's in the last, 10, 15 years that died and has really been something for you?
Honestly, taking away from the Bowies and the Princes, but Chester Bennington. Linkin Park was...
Call me in your skin? These moves when I heal.
It so defined a genre of music. It defined early 2000s, just something deeper than your Britney Spears, your Backstreet Boys. It was something, it defined something deeper than pop itself, but still ran that genre.
It danced at rap rock.
Yeah.
Or again, when you're dealing with Limp Bizkit and Korn and all that other stuff, want to talk about transcending, it pushed past a lot of that, I don't say garbage, but that garbage rap rock and that like, okay, whatever, and became its own. I mean, the Meteora album, I can't, as much as we could kind of poke fun and like, oh my goodness, you're so edgy. Oh, you listen to Linkin Park.
And I didn't even
who didn't own the Meteor album?
Right, and I definitely never thought of myself as an edgy person. I never went through an edgy period in my life. I just really didn't. I just really enjoyed music that had some type of lyric significance.
Some edgy lyrics.
I don't see them as edgy, though. As long as I'm going, like, lyrics to
Looking
me,
back at them, you're like, holy crap, how do we miss the signs?
well, he always was that way.
He was very open about it, and you're just like, oh, he's a musician, and then he takes his own life, and you're like, oh, dude wasn't messing around.
Right, and he suffered with depression for all of his life, basically, and it goes to show that you can rise to the top of your music ability and still not be happy. One of the best articles that was written by it, roughly, a week or so after he passed, was by the lead singer of Korn. Yep. He talks about how, not Korn, Disturbed.
Oh, okay.
Lead singer of Disturbed talked about Chester gave him crap when he came out with or didn't give him crap, but congratulated him when he came out with Sounds of Silence.
Right, the Simon & Garfunkel cover.
And
well, he actually sang.
Yeah.
For the first time instead of just.
And they used to be on tour together, and the article was the lead singer of Disturbed used to give Chester a bunch of crap for actually singing, roughly, went on top of whatever rapping or word poetry you want to call it. But that was a moment for the lead singer of Disturbed to come out and go, yeah, he suffered from this and it sucked, but I was glad to have known him.
No, for as long as I could.
But yeah, Linkin Park was a big part of growing up to me for getting into music, and obviously I expanded differently, and I grew to know more artists and everything, but I think everybody has that band in their early to late teens that is like, oh, this means something to me.
Oh, for sure. I mean, and as you're speaking about that, like, I'm narrowing my focus down a little bit more. I mean, we could even say the impact that Chris Cornell. Mm-hmm. Like, you want to talk about just vocals that were unparalleled. Everybody recognizes Chris Cornell.
Absolutely.
So I can't. I say I want to feel a little bad for not picking him out specifically because he also was a huge influence for some of my later years. I didn't get into a lot of Mr. Cornell stuff. Like, again, my music, I was weird with my music. I grew up in a...
Black Hole Sun is...
Still creeps you out, the video?
Creeps me out. Like, gave me nightmares as a child to the point where my parents yelled at my brother for at least an hour, angry at him for letting me sit there and watch MTV late night hours between Black Hole Sun, Jeremy by Pearl Jam, and even
that's a messed up video too.
And I hate to admit this, but Thriller by Michael Jackson
spooked you out?
Scared the crap out of me. Vincent Price's voice at the end of Thriller is just like the beginning musics to Unsolved Mysteries to me right now. Gives me goosebumps. Oh, yeah, I'm seeing PTSD.
I'm seeing a gray in your hair starting to show up. Unsolved Mysteries. Classic.
Sorry, that music is creepy.
No, that was the point. Well, yeah. We go into Michael Jackson. I have not seen the documentary, I guess you want to call it. It's the HBO special of Leaving Neverland. Yeah. And I have not sat and watched it. I mean, I will admit I am not surprised and have been always in the camp of, I'm sure he's been diddling kids for a long time. It's a case of, it dances at Bill Cosby line. Of what point do you look and go, what they did as a person is absolute trash and garbage. But what they did as an entertainer or as Michael Jackson's music is forever well known.
True.
What he did as a person was pretty shitty.
Yeah.
If you fall into that camp you believe it, that he did it.
I've always been a firm believer of I can like their music, but I don't have to like them as a person.
Sure. And again, that's where you're dancing with the Bill Cosby case of you separate.
He's not that's a little different to me. That's
Bill Cosby is
different than me,
hilarious.
though.
Bill Cosby is hilarious. His between his comedy, and you gotta remember though, some of the comedy is a little bit dated, so some of it doesn't translate well. And comedy is
most of it does. Have you watched it recently? Because I have. Most of it doesn't.
The movies are his stand-up stuff.
His stand-up stuff.
His stand-up stuff is great. A lot of his stand-up stuff is him and home and family. It doesn't get terribly edgy. It doesn't. He's a fairly clean.
So we're
comedian.
just going to completely disregard the conversation or segment he had about Spanish Fly.
Well, and again, but that's with hindsight. We look back and go, oh, that might not have been jokes. There's a fine line between jokes and experience.
I mean, it's all fun and games when he's talking about drooling from the dentist because it's a very familiar everyday experience. But looking back on it, a lot of even nowadays, comics don't translate very well in the very sensitive world that we live in now. Me and you have had conversations about that.
And some of the conversations I'm going to keep off this show for a little while. I mean, I don't want to chase off what listeners that we have. But, I mean, it's not so much the sensitivity. I mean, yes, the sensitivity is good. The consciousness is good. Is it good to call for change? And I mean, hey, happy International Women's Day! Like,
I love that segue. Nicely done, sir.
It's you got to have your change, and you have to push for being aware of these social issues and stuff. Comedy is always going to be unlike music. Comedy is always going to be a flowing medium or a flowing art. It is something where music can come back around. Because you're talking with beats and you're talking with things that are kind of universal. Whereas comedy's one of the few arts, and as a novice comedian myself, I've learned that comedy's one of the few arts where you need an audience to do it. You could do music. You don't need an audience for music. It's done all the time.
Right.
You record it and it gets done, you put it together and you have a product. Just telling jokes without a laugh or without an audience, it is a feedback loop. It is even comedians now that don't dance that line of what is political or what is edgy and stuff, they still have to change jokes based on location, based on time, if there's a situation that happened. I mean, right after 9/11, you had Gilbert Gottfried on Saturday Night Live going, well, this sucks, like nobody wants to laugh.
Nobody wants to be.
Now, admittedly, he's credited for being one of the first persons to make a joke about 9/11. Where it just happened, and there's an interview with him. I can't remember, and I wish I could cite it. Where he was like, "Yeah, the crowd was rough. Nobody wanted to laugh, and he's just like, I'm gonna fall on this sword. I'm gonna become a bad guy and make a joke about it, but it's gonna break the tension, and they're gonna either band together and hate me or whatnot." And so he immediately made the joke of, you know what? I'm gonna leave here sooner, so I could catch my I could catch my connecting flight at the Empire State Building.
Wow.
And everyone was like, dude, it's been a day. But he went with it and got some laughs, but the whole thing is, I want to talk about sensitivity. I think people forget that comedians are supposed to poke fun at things.
Part of comedy is making your audience uncomfortable.
Yeah. To make them question and go, whoa, why'd you do that? Now, I do agree that it's also not a case of punching down. If you could punch up and make somebody feel uncomfortable, then you got it.
Right.
If we get, again, I don't want to be political and stuff, but it is very clear through evidence polls and everything else, through polls and such, that our president currently is not a well-liked guy. By all political spectrums. Am I correct? Republican, Democrat, independents, whoever, they don't care for our president very much. So if you have a comedian who could punch up, not down, because we could make fun of the president.
It's low-hanging fruit. Sure. It's easy pickings.
But if you find a way to punch up at a joke and get people still to feel uncomfortable, I don't know if I'm good with this. The guy is clearly terrible, but you also said something that's terrible. And as soon as that thought process comes in and you start thinking about things and basically realize they have a sense of morality and could put two. It's fantastic. It's great. But there is a level, as you said, an oversensitivity maybe. But I mean, it's a social consciousness.
I like to, of course, go back to kind of talking about, unfortunately, people that have passed. But I'd like to see how George Carlin would live in this day and age as far as the sensitivities. Do you feel like he, in his prime, being somebody
define his prime? That is
seven things you can't say on television.
So early 90s?
Or early 90s, late 80s?
I personally prefer early 80s, late 70s Carlin over... Because it got to a point where Carlin it went from Carlin...
He was edgy to be edgy.
No, it's just old man, like the concept of our podcast here.
Old man
yells at clouds. Get off my lawn, you damn kids. Like, I get early Carlin. And a lot of it, too, is making fun of Catholic. Because he was the Catholicism and religion and stuff.
Okay.
And not even so much making fun of, but he was very Seinfeld-esque. Before Seinfeld, of observational humor. Hey, I go to church and do this. And hey, have you noticed this? And here's some weird things we have in common. But then he started to get a little bit edgy because the 80s kind of got messed up. Coke is a hell of a drug.
True.
And so he started pushing that edge of, I'm going to start bitching at things. I'm going to start focusing on things. I'm going to start looking at things. Then he pushed in the 90s where he's like, you're all diseased. Y'all need to die. And just went into this very... not dark, but a mean
But
sense of
Carlin
humor.
was known for being about the First Amendment and censorship. So
But
here
people
you have...
people still misconstrued First Amendment. Like, the government's not going to punish him, but HBO could be like, get off our channel and be okay with it because...
Listen, if the HBO is throwing up Game of Thrones, I'm sure old school, even extra old man Carlin would have a place at the altar that is HBO.
He would be there just because Daenerys shows her titties. Like, that's why he would be a fan of it. Like,
I'm just saying.
that's where you get Game of Thrones from.
He was one of the first people to fight, or I shouldn't say the first people, but one of the bigger proponents in the comedian world, the comedy world, to say, I have the right to say these things.
Pryor was
You
there.
may not like that.
Pryor was even more of an example of that. Pryor, especially being a minority,
Right.
in the 70s and the 80s, had a bigger uphill battle than...
White Catholicism.
Bald Bob Ross, like he was able to get away with a lot more. I mean, come on, Pryor's joke. One of his jokes is in a crack house, and his hair catches on fire, and he's running down the block, like, So yeah, I agree. But get back to our point on this is, again, cultural awareness is a good thing, obviously. It's contended for some reason. People think that they need to fight it. But there's a level of awareness. It is just a case of what translates and what doesn't. Music will most likely translate because music is also much
universal.
Well, music's universal, but it's also much like clothing trends and stuff where they will come around. 80s music and pop and certain beats and even a lot of rappers will... I don't want to say steal, but sample stuff from older bands and older groups and rehash it for new music. And I'm fine with that. That's awesome. Like, celebrate music and all what it has to offer. If there's a killer beat and you feel that you can expand on it and you get permission from the Bee Gees to use and then you rap over or something, awesome. Because, hey, who knows? That kid's going to go, that's a sweet thing. Oh, wait, I'm going to go listen to some Bee Gees, and they become big Bee Gees
I would have
fans.
never have listened to the Sugar Hill Gang.
Okay. Hip hop.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hip hop, don't stop rocking. Bang, bang. Oh, man.
Okay, so let's kind of play off of the fact that our listeners don't really know us all that well. So let's kind of ask some questions here. 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. Which decade do you love the most and why?
Oof. I mean, 90s... I lived through, so my view is a little bit skewed. Like, obviously I lived through the 80s too, but my living through the 80s is much more different than living through the 90s.
You matured in the 90s.
Right. I was shaped by the 90s.
Yes.
Like, as much as I'm like, oh, I'm an 80s child, like, I was still I was still under 10.
Right.
Like, in the 80s. And
I can't even claim I'm an 80s child.
Right. Like, it's just a case of when you're yeah, unless you're born in the 70s and was molded by the 80s to be able
Right.
to start formulating cognitive
Like
thoughts.
some of our other friends.
Yeah, sure. I mean, even then, they start dancing that line of they go mid to late 90s, like where they start developing, like college is where you really start getting your critical thinking. Like high school, you get some thinking, you get influenced a lot, but you're still very culpable to influence in high school.
Okay.
You're still very vulnerable to peer pressure. You're still vulnerable to media pressure and such. You're a high schooler. You're still at the whims of your parents. You're still at the whims of a schedule. You're still very much coming into your own. So you're still
Okay.
influenced by outside sources. Whereas when you hit college, you're either going to fly or flop on your own, and you're much more shown critical thinking, and you're much more, at least typically for me, you're able to do more critical thinking. You're able to go outside. And unfortunately for me, college was at the start of 2000s.
Okay.
So the year
So is
2000, I
this
graduated
even-
high school.
So is this even applicable to you?
It is only because now I'm going with the fantasies that we've come about the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. What fantasy thoughts and so 60s, I'm not interested in living at those times.
Okay.
70s, really good music.
Really?
I think so. I think 70s had great music. I think 80s had. I don't want to say 80s are better though.
What do you see as your 70s music though? Define it for me.
I mean, that's when you had a lot of your Zeppelin and
Okay,
your
so you're
classic
talking
rock.
about 70s rock
Yeah.
because 70s rock isn't what I would say defined the 70s.
What would you say define the 70s for you?
Disco.
Disco music? Disco came in, but I'm not a disco. Yeah, I like rock. I would stick with rock. 80s, I mean, again, we established coke is a hell of a drug. So, I like a lot of the 80s had such a fantastical view on things. I mean, I don't want to live through Cold War if you want to go that route, but if we're going fantastic, everything's cool. Like, 80s is exciting. Like, 80s and 90s is
It's
exciting.
80s material. Like when you say 80s is fantasy.
Fantastical, yeah.
Fantastical. What about it is fantastical?
Well, and
to
I'm
you?
telling you, like, 80s and 90s is like, your technology boom is insane.
Oh, okay.
Like 80s and 90s is frightening at the technological boom. So, I don't want to get. Again, you're making this very politically charged. If I was a non-white male,
Okay.
I would not want to be around in the 80s.
Okay.
So I would push for the 90s. If I was a Wolf of Wall Street white male in the 80s, absolutely the 80s.
Got it.
Where I would have every advantage and just it would be amazing. 90s would be a lot of fun. Depends on again what age I'm experiencing in the 90s. I don't think 90s is that fun for adults. Like
Okay.
if you're in your 30s and 40s, if you're a Grey Muzzle and you're in the 90s.
Okay. What is there?
What's
to-
there?
Right.
Like taking your kids to Discovery Zone? Like what is the big thing to do in the 90s?
Where they all get participation awards and everybody's
sure,
great
yeah.
at soccer.
Yeah, sure. Like, and then you have to file a lawsuit about being touched by the animatronic showbiz creatures. Like,
Oh my gosh.
I don't see.
Okay.
What about you?
So for me, I will
Never
have-
start with these questions with me.
apparently.
You start, and I will go off of you.
I honestly probably would be the 80s. I've always talked about
Coke is a hell of a drug. Got it.
I've always talked about as far as pop culture and movies and some things that
16
hadn't
Candles.
But that is what I like. 16 Candles. I'm blanking on all of the John Walter movie, Waters movies now, but the Heathers, Breakfast Club, yeah, things like that is what I grew up watching when I was 8 or 9 years old, because obviously those were the movies that were being shown on USA up all night.
Jeez. Oh my God, Frank.
But those are the movies that I watched, and obviously they were heavily edited, but I always
You didn't have it on Betamax?
gravitated to those movies because they were me as a 9 or 10-year-old. This is what high school is going to be like. This is what, and it wasn't, these were original stories, quote unquote, using air quotes here, but original stories being written. They're not being retold. Like, I feel like the 90s and early 2000s and even now are our childhood being repackaged and forced down our throats. I mean, it's the nostalgia factor.
And we talked about that too with a lot of these movies being remade, between Aladdin being remade, Lion King being remade, trying to capture. I mean, they're putting spins on stuff like Battleship,
right.
Oh, congratulations, you took a board game and turned it into a movie. And I'm
But
not
that's
talking like
building
Fireball
from-
Alley or anything else, or Hungry Hungry Hippo or something.
But they're building off of something like Pirates of the Caribbean. Who thought that a Disney movie would be built off of a Disney animatronic ride, and become a multi-million-dollar industry?
Good writing in Johnny Depp.
I mean, yeah.
I mean,
a lot of good writing in Johnny Depp movies are memorable, but I'm just saying the 80s were, for me, a pop cultural boom, essentially.
No, and I agree, because then you compare that to the 90s and go, what did our...
Right. What does the 90s do? The
took
90s
your kids to the Discovery Zone and hope for the best.
Okay, so that's your opinion,
Right.
but I'm saying
What
pop
the 90s
culture in 90s brought, grunge bands.
Sure. But were your parents listening to grunge?
Oh, absolutely not. But I'm saying early 90s, you had hip-hop, which my brother did listen to.
Hip-hop was definitely it.
But there wasn't just a pop cultural boom in the 90s. I mean, you kind of get it with, like, some of the nostalgia factor.
I think not so much a boom. I think there was a pop culture divide. A good divide, but definitely a divide of... I want to use the word segregation.
Okay.
But not in a negative way, like we see segregating, obviously, but cultural diversity. We'll use that. A pop cultural diversity, where it became more acceptable to like a variety of things. Where 80s kind of got fixated. You were either a preppy, you were Breakfast Club does a good job of just highlighting. You were the pretty princess, you were the nerd, you were the jock, you listened to either Bon Jovi or
Duran Duran,
or Boy George, or even your 80s country. Like, it was very hard-lined. I think 90s really started to blur those lines a little bit and went, we can start sampling.
And it got even more blurred into the 2000s.
Oh, in 2000s and now into, what do they call this, the 10s? The aughts, they call it? Oh, jeez. As an electrician, it hurts me in different ways. But, okay, in the aughts, we're sampling, and we're almost done with the aughts, too, by the way.
Which is There's going to be the 20s again.
So, yeah, okay. I mean, and we have to ask this, because it is International Women's Day, which gives you an idea that even though we're recording for March 14th, it's still only the 8th, we've got a busy weekend coming up. A busy couple weekends.
So his segue is based on our friend Travis's question, and it was directly to me. If you could be any video game protagonist of the opposite gender, which would you be and why?
Ooh.
It kind of stumped me, I'm not going to lie. Had to really think about it.
And what'd you got?
But I did realize it would probably be Desmond Miles, the main protagonist from Assassin's Creed.
That is a game I have played the first one and second one of and went, bleh, and stopped. So, go on. Why Mr. Desmond?
So, the reasons why are kind of academic for me. It goes into history and science and the technology that could come from the combination of both. Desmond is thrust into this war against assassins versus Templars with, honestly, a larger storyline. I won't spoil it.
Fine. Okay, fine.
But it's a larger storyline with essentially alternative histories. I listened to some certain podcasts.
Fake news.
Not that bad, but just interesting alternative histories as far as like creation of certain human beings or some type of hybrid human beings. Okay. It's just it tickles a lot of my own fancies.
Oh, okay.
What about you?
For opposite gender or same gender?
Either or both.
I mean, well, we could take turns. I'll go opposite gender as well. Hey, again, Women's Day. Mine is unfortunately generic, and I gave it a little thought as well because we did have the questions a few minutes beforehand. I mean, Samus Aran.
Okay.
is still one of the big surprises for me because I did have the original Metroid for Nintendo, and when the big reveal when you beat the game is she takes her helmet off and there's green hair underneath. It's supposed to be yellow, but hey, it's Nintendo. Or I'm colorblind. Can't remember which. So Samus is always kind of cool. They tried to tame her and soften her edges with some other stuff. There was a game that was supposed to be released or was released. I don't remember. And it tried to be more story mode, and it just didn't work out. Like, just leave Samus as is. She's a badass. She's a hard ass. She's a bounty hunter. Like, she's a bounty hunter. She goes out and fights all sorts of crazy things, more for the bounty code than for lawful goodness sake. Like, she doesn't deal with the galactic police and all the other stuff. That's not her MO. She's a bounty hunter. She goes and makes her money, and the nicest thing that she does is saves a bunch of creatures before I think Planet Zebes blows up. She saves a bunch of animals, which kind of is a mistake because they could have been the ones that was carrying the Metroid virus anyway. So, yeah. I mean, there's some deep lore there. But no, I mean, Samus is kind of a grade A badass and not a character that they try to tone down with overt femininity and princess needing to be saved from Mario or Link or from anything else. But she does her own saving. She goes through, loses her gear, and gets it back, trials and tribulations, and she's kind of becomes a badass in her own right. So that's my female character. I know it's not terribly innovative in like a deep dive.
Cut.
Yeah, it's not a deep cut, but how about for you? How about females?
Man, female probably would be... Female protagonist would be Alice from, what is it, McGee?
American McGee.
American McGee.
That's a good one, actually.
Just played that game both versions, I think, I played.
There was two of them. I think they're both for the PC. I don't remember if they got ported to a console.
I remember playing, I think, the most recent one on console for a little bit.
Okay, it might have been one of the PlayStations, if I'm not mistaken then.
I have a big love for Alice in Wonderland, so that kind of struck that...
You crazy.
Right.
We get crazy.
Got to hit some bitches with a toy horse, hobby horse. I'm all for it.
The teapot?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was good. Blood, guts, gore, a weird Cheshire cat. It hit all kinds of things.
I think that's one of the best Cheshire cats, personally.
You Halloweened as it once.
I did do a Halloween based on that one. It had like the gray, like not spandexy, but like Under Armour-y type material, and had somebody draw in Sharpie the tattoos that the
I
Cheshire
remember.
cat. It was good. All right, Alice, American McGee's Alice. I guess for the generic turnaround, if I'm going to go male protagonist, again, a little bit of thought. Not going deep cut, but I am going deep cut.
Okay.
So, I've been trying to figure out the way how to phrase it, but mine is Link. However, the hero of wins Link.
Do tell.
Okay, so obviously it's not the same Link through all of the stories. It's a kind of a curse that was put upon Hyrule in itself. This could be an entire episode in of itself. I went down the dark rabbit hole. However, the hero of wins from the Wind Waker game was a Link that wasn't supposed to be the hero, so to speak. Like, Ganon was trying to get all the princesses so he can get the Triforce, as per usual. Triforce of Courage was nowhere in sight. It had been broken up into 8 pieces and scattered throughout the flooded world. Link had his sister kidnapped because Ganon was trying to round up all the females trying to find Zelda, because she possessed the Triforce of Wisdom. So basically you have a kid whose sister gets kidnapped, and he goes, okay, I gotta find my sister. And then starts, like, going on this adventure to find his sister, and everybody's doubting him, like, no, blah, 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 you can't do this, you're no hero, blah, blah, blah. And then he's basically told about the Triforce because he finds out that Ganon has a sister. And he's like, okay, well, I'm gonna go get my sister. I don't care. Well, to defeat Ganon, you're gonna need this piece of Triforce. Okay, but I wanna get my sister. So he goes and has to fish up 8 of the pieces of Triforce of Courage. Even through the face of doubts, they'd be like, you're not the hero. You're not the hero of legend. You're not going to be him. And he's like, don't care. Got to find my sister. Puts the Triforce of Courage together, becomes the hero of wind, and still goes, don't care, gotta find my sister.
Tunnel vision.
Very tunnel vision. So, but the concept of him being a lot of the other links are either given the Triforce or have the Triforce or come across it, or in this kid's case of sailing on the world by himself, digs it up and becomes the hero and fights a Ganon who is very much larger than him, bigger than him, and is actually even wielding the Triforce of Power, and still manages to, well, mostly beat him, but that's a spoiler for another time. But no, I do like that. I do like that Link, because it's also Kid Link. A lot of it in the Smash Brothers is seen as Toon Link.
Right.
But it's a better Link as far as I'm concerned in terms of like character development. Where, yeah, it's a silent protagonist in this, but that Link was, hey, I'm trying to find my sister, goes on this adventure, and you get to see him become a hero. Not just get cool gear that you see in the other Zeldas. Like, oh,
He's already assumed a hero.
He's already assumed the hero of the sworn swordsman or the hero of time or all this other stuff. He's just a kid looking for a sister and becomes the hero of winds.
Okay.
So I like heroes that do it in the face of doubt. Like, just straight up, no, you're not him. Watch me. P.S. Where's my sister?
All right. So the other question that we did receive was from another listener, Becky. Asks, what is a piece of geek that shaped your view of the world? I'll have you start this one.
Okay. It's shaped my view of the world. So obviously it's not going to be something that I like in of itself. Just straight up, I just like this thing. This is something that has to shape my view of the world then.
Yeah.
Okay. Then oddly, I'm going to have to stick with the furry fandom and the furry culture. It's a subculture that has taught me as someone who was, like, I grew up in a fairly conservative family. I grew up in a family that had its own viewpoints and were Bush supporters. We'll say that much. I'm not going to go on current politics, but I know they definitely were voting for both father and son. We'll just leave it at that. That said, my viewpoint was also my views as a child and growing up was based on those. So there's definitely a level of, I don't say isolationist, but not understanding. Through this culture, I've come to learn more about just different kind of struggles from different kind of people, not just race, but we could go into gender identities, which can be its own entity all to itself, but just different people dealing with just stresses and anxieties. Different people dealing with outside pressures from friends, from government, from parents, from just helped me more than anything else kind of shape it into a little bit more of a understanding person. You know, I'm pretty loose on the lips sometimes and a little bit hot-headed and, you know, a little bit of a temper. But I think through this, being a fan of this culture and this kind of community, got me to understand a little bit more of.
It taught you to not be ignorant?
I mean, ignorance is bliss, and I was blissful for a while. But no, it did give me a level of patience. It gave me a level of understanding. It gave me a level of just compassion, and if not, but I at least could empathize a little bit better with some stuff. So yes. that would be mine. How about, what's something that shaped your geek view?
I would probably have to go back to a similar situation as your own, but mine would be a book series. My mom was a big reader growing up, and my dad really wasn't, but I got read to when I was a kid, when I went to bed, and things like that. Not a lot of real variety in the books that I read when I was growing up. Mm-hmm. It wasn't until, actually, at the time, the person I was dating introduced me into the Wheel of Time series.
Ooh, good stuff.
I still have yet to finish it. I have restarted this series at least 4 times.
Okay.
But it's because I stop and have to go all the way back to book 1. Okay. I think I've read Eye of the World like 5 times.
Okay.
They just they were my foothold, they were my tiptoe into the fantasy realm.
Okay.
I didn't read Tolkien as a kid. My dad didn't spend that time teaching me how to read books like that. My mom was more into like romance novels and true crime. Ironically enough, I introduced her to Wheel of Time later on in life.
Okay.
And she's finished the series where I haven't. But that is where I got introduced to the fantasy realm and realized at that point it just became more about my life.
It's something that opened your doors to your current hobbies, basically?
Right. And made me more aware of just the fantasy life of elves and sprites and dwarves and stuff like that. And it opened the door to a part of geekdom that kind of is way more streamed now.
Well, yeah, back then it was definitely more of a hidden, I don't want to say hidden, but definitely not as popular as it is now. Again, one of the biggest shows on HBO is dragons, boobies, and Jason Momoa. Like
Momoa.
It's Mimosa. Mama say Mimosa, Mimosa. Well, that's about our time. For this week, at least.
Correct.
So, next week we'll get into a little bit more LARPy world.
Yep.
As we are going to be preparing to get ready for an event on the 22nd of March.
It will be our pre-event kind of episode to give you an idea of what is LARP and what kind of things shaped us into the LARP players that we are now. And then the next episode, so the next 2 episodes will be LARP heavy. It will be essentially what we experienced that weekend that we were gone.
And we're not sure if we're going to record it on the way to the event or on the ride home to the event, from the event, or both. We'll see what we end up doing there, but at this point, we will bid you adieu. Again, as always, I am Dusty Red, and with me...
Dusty White.
And as I always say, we may know a little bit more, but we sure as hell don't know any better. Have a good night.
Night.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Grey Muzzle Geekery with Dusty Red and Dusty White. You can send your questions and comments to us at greymuzzlegeekery@gmail.com or find us on Twitter at greymuzzlegeek. We can be found on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and Buzzsprout. A special thank you to Pepper Coyote for our intro theme, and if you like what you heard, find more of his stuff on Spotify, Patreon, or purchase it directly from his Bandcamp page.